Welcome to Kinship Cafe. I'm your host, Jim Jones, and I am joined today with Andy Lewis.
How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, and today we're going to break the rules, and we're going to be talking about politics. And maybe we can see how many other things we can talk about that'll get people upset.
Yeah.
But just before we do that, would you like to start us off with a song?
Absolutely.
Right on.
I don't get well no more. I have had my fun. If I don't get well no more. Yeah, my health is failing me, babe. Ooh, and I'm going down slow. Won't you please ride my mama and let her know the shape I'm in? Won't you please ride my mama and let her know the shape I'm in? Tell her to pray for me, mama. Forgive me for my sins. On that next train, south, baby, you can look for my clothes home. On that next train, south, baby, you can look for my clothes home. If you don't see me, baby, all you can do is moan. I'm going down slow. I have had my fun. If I don't get well no more. I have had my fun. If I don't get well no more. Yeah, my health is failing me, babe. Ooh, yeah, and I'm going down slow. Yes, I am.
Andy, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
So what was that called?
That was called Going Down Slow.
Going Down Slow. And so tell me about the song.
It's an old Texas blues song. A lot of the stuff I play is like mostly older stuff, older style blues. I feel like it kind of relates to what's going on now, kind of.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the themes that they talk about back then certainly pertain to what's going on now.
Oh, sure.
Current events and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, I think the struggle is kind of perennial, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing music?
Oh, shoot. 14, 15 years?
Really?
Something like that, yeah.
Right on. Well, I'm definitely digging what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So are you doing anything as far as recording anything these days?
I'm hoping to get in the studio pretty soon, record an EP. I've got a full band together now, so hopefully we'll be able to release something pretty soon.
Right
We're
on.
working on it.
Yeah, well, I've been watching it live a couple of different places and seeing you with the band, and it's sounding good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How'd you like it?
I do. So, politics.
Uh,
Of course, everybody says you're not supposed to talk about it.
I think you can talk about it. Just kind of tread lightly, depending on what you're talking about and who you're talking to. But I mean, it's not totally out of the realm of discussion.
Sure, sure. Well, to me, I think the important things, they're gonna get people on edge maybe because they matter.
Yeah,
Right.
important topics.
Yeah, and if it doesn't matter, then why are we talking about it?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit earlier to me that one of the challenges you've got with kind of our current political situation is the whole climate. What kind of things are you seeing?
I feel like everybody's just too angry and too quick to snap at somebody else, and it seems like a lot of people have kind of lost the ability to just reasonably talk and maybe agree to disagree every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like everybody's, at least on the internet and a lot of political spaces, it's just like, you have to agree with me, and if you don't agree with me, I'm going to call you names, or we can't talk, or and it's really disheartening to see that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is a pretty serious issue for our society right now because we have to work these issues out, right? I mean, politics gets a bad rap and a bad name, but at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're working out how are we going to live together,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we have to. We got to figure that part out.
Yeah, it kind of bothers me. I hear a lot of people say like, "Oh, well, I'm not into politics. Politics doesn't affect me." And it's like, politics affects everything you do. It affects every aspect of your life, whether you realize it or not. And so we need to be able to talk about these things and have serious discussions instead of it just coming down to a shouting match or people just completely tuning out because that's the climate there is now.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on why it's kind of ended up here?
Not really sure. I feel like everybody just wants to have their opinion, and they want their opinion to be the only opinion, it'd be right. And I'm not really sure exactly why that is so prevalent now. I don't know if it's because of the internet now and the rise of, political forums and websites where you can just go and basically an echo chamber for whatever you already think, and then it just kind of gets people into their own little bubble so much that they can't really talk to other people and they can't have a honest discussion or civil discussion. And it's just, I'm not really sure what led to that, but it seems like that's where we're at now. It's kind of bothers me a little bit.
Well, you've mentioned social media a couple of times. How do you see that playing into this issue?
Like I said, it's just basically like all you have to do is go online and you can find any kind of website that, basically confirms what you already believe. And so people just kind of, like I said, they get stuck in these echo chambers of what they want to hear, and it just sort of, I don't know, they just hear it for so long, it gets ingrained to them, and then they totally shut out any opposing views, or I'm not really sure what it is, and also, social media gives everybody a voice too, and sometimes that's not the greatest thing. I mean, it's good for everybody to have a voice, but some people take it a little bit too far.
So the decorum with some of the social media kind of gets left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Every day I see somebody, on social media, we're all allowed to post our opinions. And I mean, I guess if you post your opinion and you put that out there, you're sort of letting everybody know, but it doesn't always warrant a response or a fight from somebody else. And I see that happens too much. Somebody will just post their opinion and then the comments just start flying and names get called, and I'm not really with it. I've had to disconnect myself from politics online for for a while because it's just
Yeah.
too much. It's too negative.
Well, I've known a number of friends that have had to do the same thing and felt like they either had to take breaks from Facebook or just avoided that kind of conversation, or you hear a lot of people just unfriending people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it is a challenging thing. We've kind of wrestled with this issue a few times here on Kinship Cafe. And at least part of my thoughts about what's going on, and I'll just kind of offer this up and see what you think, is that we're going through some interesting changes in our culture in terms of a lot of our traditional thoughts about kind of the way things are in terms of, you know, who we are as a country, what is the world all about, values, morality, all that kind of stuff, is going through some big shifts, some big changes. And, you know, part of that is, I think that, you know, as we've become more and more kind of a scientifically oriented culture, some of the traditional answers haven't been working as well. And so a lot of things are shifting. And when that starts to shift, or people feel like the foundation that they've stood on just kind of falls out from underneath them, then they kind of hold on,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like for dear life. And they're like, dig their heels in, draw the line in the sand. And I think it's kind of a fear defensive kind of a thing about, you know, I need something in my life to stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
And so I think that part of maybe where we need to go is figure out how can we engage in the conversation, acknowledging this change that's going on, and find a way for people to feel safe in order to explore what's happening.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really know what it's going to take, but I agree that there's a giant cultural shift going on, and it seems to be frightening a lot of people. And like you said, they just sort of just draw a line in the sand and just, you know, try not to budge, and it leads us to, you know, unsavory political climates like we have now. You know,
Right.
Yeah, hopefully it'll change and it'll get better.
So one of the things that I think you and I are hoping for in terms of being able to have these kinds of dialogues more civilly with other people across the aisle, right, is that people would be open to hearing other perspectives and potentially open to change. Mm-hmm. I know there's been a number of things that I felt like I've had to have some kind of significant changes in my life. So I know it can be complicated and it can be scary. Do you find that you've had to go through some changes?
You know, for the most part, I sort of embrace change because I realize that there's not really much you can do about it in some instances, and so I just kind of try to go with the flow. I mean, personally, I've gone through some changes in the past few years, started taking my music more seriously and things like that. But like you said, yeah, there's just so much stuff changing that it makes people uncomfortable, and you know, most I can try to do is better myself and, you know, make kind of personal changes in my life that I would like to see other people make, and, you know, sort of sounds cliche, but be the change you want to see in the world, you know?
Yeah.
I try to practice that.
Right on. So you said you've kind of worked to embrace change some. How do you do that? Like, how does that work for you?
Like I said, I just kind of came to the realization one day that sometimes there's things that you just can't control, and so instead of being upset about it or anxious about it, just try to embrace it and, you know, find what good can come from it, and just try to don't look at it so negatively, because, you know, change can be bad, but it can also be really good if you embrace it and, you know, try to find the best parts of it. And, you know, things always change. People have life-changing events, and I'm a firm believer that it's all about the way you deal with the situation as it's coming at you, rather, you know, it's the way you deal with it rather than just react to it. And so try to practice that when, you know, as best I can.
Right. Yeah, I know it can be really hard, I think, especially as we get older, to embrace it as much. Maybe when we're younger, because physically, mentally, emotionally, we're going through so many changes in our lives as we're growing, you know, maybe it feels like it's a little bit more natural, and maybe as we get older, you know, getting to be my age and beyond, it starts to feel harder to be open to that kind of change. But one of the things I've brought up before too is if we think about being alive, living things grow, which means they change, right? I mean, things that don't change are things that are dead.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to find ways, like you're saying, where we can kind of come to embrace it a little bit more and find ways to manage, I think, some of that anxiety that comes from feeling like we're in uncharted territories and we're going somewhere we haven't been before, or maybe some of our traditional stuff is being left behind. That, I think, with Kinship Cafe, when we focus on this idea of well-being, this is a big part of that. How do we manage that issues of anxiety and change? One of the things that I find has worked really well for me is practicing mindfulness, and with that, looking at kind of what you were saying earlier, how we're responding to different things. It kind of gives you that pause to say, why am I feeling this way about what's going on? And taking time to evaluate that.
That's also, I've like you were talking about, as you get older, you learn things and you grow, and I've learned that not every situation or every comment or action deserves a reaction or warrants a reaction. And it's just like, sometimes you just kind of need to let it go, and that's all. Another one of the things that I've been trying to embrace, and I deal with anxiety issues, so change really initially wasn't so easy to deal with, but that's something that I've been trying to work on, like realizing, hey, I'm feeling some type of way because of something's changing here, and trying to realize what it is, and then find a way to deal with it that doesn't bring so much anxiety. So that's how I practice mindfulness. I don't know, would you consider that mindfulness?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that apply to mindfulness, but really it has a lot to do with just becoming aware of where you are, what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, and giving yourself space to process it. So yeah, I mean, it can happen in a lot of different ways. It's not just simply, doing meditation, although that's obviously one of the ways that you do it. So yeah. So with the political stuff, a lot of the reasons I think people get concerned about it, at least the people who are actually involved, because I do also hear what you're saying, where a lot of people are saying, I don't want anything to do with politics, right? Maybe we'll come back to that, but for those who are involved, I think part of the reason that things are as animated as they are right now is they feel like there's a lot on the line. Like there's maybe some bigger decisions that are potentially going to be made one way or the other. Are you sensing some of that?
Yeah. I'll figure out how to respond to that without getting too political.
It's all right. We can run with whatever it is.
It's just, I don't know. It's hard for me to even put my finger on like what it might be, because it's just so much different than anything we've ever really seen before. And I think it is, like you said, there's just so much on the line that people feel like, a wrong decision could just be irreversible. And, a lot of people feel like, I don't know, the country is, going one way or the other. And so they're trying, their hardest to stop that. And like you said, it comes back to just people being super afraid of anything that they're not used to. And I think we need to embrace that, because it's going to happen one way or the other. So we might as well, it's 2019. We got to start making some changes.
Right.
Things can't always stay the same.
And kind of break the ice a little bit. Some of the issues that I think are some of the big ones that people are concerned about are things like climate change, things that we're talking about, foreign policy with other countries, internally feels like there's been more challenges with how we deal with race relations, and economically, kind of the balancing between, profits over people kind of a question. I mean, those are all like pretty serious.
Yeah, I mean,
things.
Start playing with things like people's health care and stuff like that, and the climate, and they tend to freak out, for good reason, It's,
yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the more we can find a way to get out of the attack mode is going to be helpful, because once you're feeling attacked, like mentally your brain shifts gears
Mm-hmm.
and it goes into this defensive mode, and you really can't even hear what the other person's saying.
Yeah.
You're just looking at, how do I protect myself? And so it really shuts down the communication process when people feel like they're being attacked. So I think that's going to be one of the things that we're going to have to really shift culturally too, because a lot of our political leaders or people involved in that arena will play off of the issue of fear,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so easy to kind of get people animated. But at the same time, it kind of creates a problem of people being able to hear each other.
Yeah, it creates more problems, because then, like you said, people can't hear each other, and that's the last thing we need. We need to be able to sit down and talk about important issues, 'cause that's how you solve things.
Yeah.
You know, if everybody's just fighting all the time, nothing gets solved. And we all agree that there's problems that need to be fixed. So it's like the next logical step would be, hey, let's sit down and talk to each other. But it doesn't seem like that's
Yeah.
really what's happening too much.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll circle back around a bit to, you're saying that you're finding folks feeling like they don't want to engage with politics. Do you think that's a lot of the people you know, or is that a smaller set?
I feel like it's a lot of younger people. They've just, people my age and younger, they've grown up and they haven't really seen much getting done, in terms of really anything, because, everyone tends to have this idea of like, all of our politicians are corrupt and, all they want is money and they're never going to do anything. And it seems like people just got to the point where they were like, well, I'm not even going to vote, or I'm not even going to pay attention to politics because they're going to do what they want anyways, and I don't have any say in it. And it's a really bad way to think about it. But I mean, I can see where people would think that.
Yeah.
And I hear it mostly with younger people, my age and younger. But I mean, so I try to talk to people and try to tell them, explain to them like, everything that goes on, like I said, revolves around politics, some kind of policy or whatever. But it's hard to get through to some people who have, just had that mindset for so long that, my opinion doesn't matter, or, I don't even pay attention to politics, it's boring, or nothing's going to happen. I hear it more than I would like to, unfortunately.
So we've had some interesting new voices come into politics, and some of them a bit younger. Do you think that's having an impact on getting other people engaged in a way that they weren't before?
I do. I think it helps. Younger people, they finally see somebody their age in Congress, and it's like, okay, maybe something will change. Like, it seems like somebody's actually fighting for us, not,
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of times like, oh, there's nothing but a bunch of old people in Congress, and they don't know what's going on with the younger generation, and they don't know what kind of struggles we face. And, I can see where somebody younger like that would definitely help, bring more people into the political arena. And I really hope it does, because, we need more people to be engaged.
I agree.
And engaged in a positive way.
Right. So how do you see, if at all, music engaging with the issues of, not necessarily just politics, but the idea of social issues in general?
Well, for me, like the kind of music that I play, blues has always been really like rooted in social issues and racial issues and political issues and stuff like that. So it's all really sort of one and the same to me. Even like I was saying earlier, a lot of the songs that I play that were written back in 1920 are still just as applicable today as they were 100 years ago when it was written. And it's like, in one way that's good because it helps keep the music alive and it helps us keep, talking about issues. But at the same time, it's like, man, it's been 100 years. I shouldn't have to sing this song anymore to get to people,
So what would be some examples of lyrics or things in those songs?
Like just a lot of songs about racial injustice and a lot of the things that happened to black folks back in the day, and see strong parallels still with some things that are going on now. And so I feel like it makes people listen a little bit more now, to some of these songs. And that's why I feel like it's kind of like my duty in a way to keep these songs alive and to play them for people. And I don't know. It's hard to think of just like one lyric or whatever,
Right.
Offhand. But there's just so many songs that deal with, segregation, slavery, and horrible political climates like we're in now. And
Yeah.
so, it just feels like the music sort of speaks to people. Like I get a lot of people that come up to me now and tell me like, "Oh, I love that music. It's nice to hear somebody playing that kind of stuff again." And I feel like it's at least partially rooted in that it's almost a history lesson in a way,
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely the two sides of that. One, bringing awareness to issues and helping people. I think one of the key things with music is it helps people maybe identify with different perspectives, right? Which is the first step in making change possible, is being able to perceive it. And it also, preserves history, like you were saying, so we don't forget about things that have happened. I remember, I don't remember when it was, but at whatever point I first really kind of became aware of that song "Strange Fruit," Billie Holiday, and things like that. It's just like, wow, it just like changed so much in terms of how I was thinking about what people were doing with music and the impact it can have. The one thing that is interesting too is there's this balance that we have to look at in terms of where we have made significant progress, because I think sometimes there's still very serious issues, real issues, but at the same time we've made real progress. And I think sometimes we shy away from talking about the progress we've made because we don't want to detract from the current ongoing issues we got to still deal with. So that's the other thing. It's a little bit of a trick. How do we find that balance, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that is very true. I never really thought about it in that way, but that's very true. I don't know.
I mean, because certainly race relations were far different not that long ago.
Yeah.
Like the idea of lynchings in trees, people burning crosses, being dragged down the street. While there was something that happened with that not too long ago, but that was shocking because it was so not current, right? I mean, that's the thing that used to happen. Obviously, segregation, the way people could openly talk about things. So much of that has changed in positive directions, but it's not finished. And so we've got to, I don't know, again, that fear thing, how do we manage that balance of being encouraged by the progress we've made, but not thinking that it's done?
I think a lot of people also think that if you talk about all the progress we made, it sort of makes it seem like, as you said, like there isn't really much of a problem now, or like we don't have to deal with what's going on now, and we need to learn to do both. Like we can multitask here.
Yeah. Well, and I think that how we can kind of spin some of this is thinking about, okay, the progress that we have made, the advances that have happened, that should encourage us to feel like we've got some resources or strengths to continue to tackle the current problems. And that might be one of the ways we can start this shift a little bit of, it's not all doom and gloom. The sky isn't always falling. There's a lot of things we've done that are amazing. How do we build on those strengths and work on, facing, again, those real problems, but from that position of strength rather than where a lot of us sometimes just feel completely helpless or the apathy sets in because, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Totally agree. Well, and you're in a great position with music too, where, you can say things in a way that somebody who isn't doing music kind of transcends a little bit kind of how the conversation happens, that is really powerful.
Yeah, I that's one of the things I like the most about music is it has a way of bringing everybody together that kind of like no other. I mean, I guess most art does that, brings people together, but there's something about music that just, no matter, what part of the spectrum you're on politically or, everybody hears one good song and it's like, oh, you know, everybody loves it and it's something that can bring us together. And so if the message in the song is positive, or if it's talking about things that are going on, you know, like hopefully it will make somebody stop and listen and think about the things that they believe and that kind of stuff, and, you know, learn to maybe talk to one another, you know, a little bit better, you know, communicate more with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing about music, really, is it's able to bring people together and hopefully get them to communicate and find a common thing that they're both interested in, and that sets the framework for other things, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andy, we've talked about, you know, one of the things that you're not supposed to talk about with other people, which is politics. So maybe we should, you know, press our luck and talk about the other big no-no, religion. Now, I know that this is an area where sometimes people can feel, again, very defensive about it. But, you know, one of the things that we want to do, like with Kinship Cafe, is have kind of a safe place where we can talk about anything, right? We don't want to be offensive or challenging in the sense of, like, not recognizing other perspectives, but we need to be able to talk about stuff, right? And the reason I'm thinking about this is, you know, earlier we were talking about some shifts in traditional ways of looking at things, or values or morality questions that have been changing. And certainly a lot of that has to do with shifts that are happening within religious contexts. Have you seen any of this happening?
I feel like there's, see, how should I put this? It, again, comes down to semi-political, at least. There, it seems to be two major groups of people who value science and like laws of the natural world and that kind of stuff, and there seems to be a growing rise of like atheism and agnosticism, and then there seems to be, like as you said, on the other side, more like traditionalists and people who are just grew up very religious, and so they see all this stuff going on around them that doesn't fit in with, you know, whatever religion they subscribe to or whatever,
Right.
and so it makes them really skeptical and really nervous and anxious, and they don't like the change, and I do see that as like another big thing that is contributing to the way our political climate is. It's just, I feel like some people think things are changing just too fast, and, you know, they were raised a certain way, and so they tend to kind of shut people out who aren't really religious. I don't know, it's hard to describe. I mean, I'm not religious. I consider myself more of an atheist. And sometimes when people that are like super religious hear me say that, they tend to just shut me off like that and don't want to listen to anything else that I have to say. And it's like, that's not the right way to be dealing with this. We should be talking civilly. We don't have to agree on everything, but you know, shutting people out, just like you said with the political discussion, it's not a good way to make progress for things. You know, just shutting people out is not the right way to make progress. And I feel like there's certain buzzwords like politics and religion that you shouldn't talk about. It just, for some reason, people just sort of tend to tune you out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I mean,
well, it impacts things because there's something about human nature that desires connecting to something larger than ourselves. And certainly there's ways that people have done that from more of a naturalistic or atheistic type of a perspective. It's not something where it has to be religious. In fact, even the concept of spirituality is kind of spilled over into those other categories, talking about how we can connect to these higher purposes of thinking about things that aren't necessarily religious, right? But one of the, I think, challenges we've got with religion is it's going through changes where, again, the shifting demographics and across the board, pretty much in all of our religious institutions, the attendance and things are going down. And so there's a lot of like kind of scrambling to figure out, well, what does this look like going forward, or how is this going to work? And I think there's been some interesting historical things that we can see where big challenges have come to religion, and it's been able to, in a sense, adapt or evolve, if you will. I mean, just even thinking about something like, flat Earth, where the idea that, the Earth is revolving around the sun and that it's not flat, and that we're not actually at the center of the universe. Mm-hmm. Those were like fighting words at one point, and somehow they were able to kind of ultimately deal with that and adjust. Although it's been interesting recently to see, the rise of people arguing for a flat Earth, and that's been quite interesting to watch. But so it gives me hope that I think that there's possibilities for how people can evolve where they're at with it. I think the part that's a bit scary for me too is that often the authority for how religion works is something that was grounded in the past. Mm-hmm. And it tends to have a worldview that says things were better before, but now they've been getting progressively worse, and we need some kind of like supernatural intervention. Mm-hmm. And part of the trick with that is it makes it really hard for people to see progress. Mm-hmm. And it makes it hard for, how do we deal with something that wasn't part of that past revelation, mm-hmm. like the Earth and the solar system versus, an Earth-centered universe. So, I mean, it's some interesting challenges that we have going forward, and it doesn't, how do we engage some of those questions that people have where you can't necessarily defend it in the same way that you would something else that's more objective. Like belief is something people say, well, I just believe it, mm-hmm. right? And especially how that affects public policy.
Yeah, that whole I just believe it thing has always been a little hard for me to grasp. I tend to lean more towards like I need some kind of evidence for this and that, but I mean I don't fault anyone who is religious, and if they have faith, and that's awesome. We just don't be so dismissive of people with other beliefs, I think is at least for super like fundamentalist religious people, because I know quite a few of them, and that seems to be, hard to make progress and talk civilly with people like that. But I do see religion starting to shift, and it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about how you just got to kind of adapt and roll with the punches when things change. Things are changing, and if they want to get attendance numbers up and bring people back into the church or into the religion, whatever religion it is, then they need to start realizing that things are changing, and Pope has been a little more relaxed on certain issues than they have been, and so I see some religions at least trying to adapt, and be more inclusive.
I mean, we look like how it's kind of shifted from the idea of women being able to be involved in church in different ways has shifted for a lot of churches. Mm-hmm. Certainly the idea of something like slavery, which at one point was argued for by the church because it's never explicitly condemned in the Bible, for example. Those would be some areas where massive change has happened. Mm-hmm. More recently, the issues like with homosexuality has created, of course, a lot of schisms in churches, but we've also seen a lot of transformations, mm-hmm. right? So it will be interesting to see what does that look like going forward, and how is that going to change or not with our current social changes.
Yeah, we're living in interesting times. That's for sure.
Yeah. I just I appreciate when we can have conversations where people have different perspectives on things, and can have them, like you said, civilly, and maybe we can learn something from each other. I think you and I are probably a little bit more on the same page with most of the stuff we've been talking about, but I get the sense that, you're pretty open to be able to talk with most people about anything.
Yeah, I try to, like I said before, just practice what I preach. I'm try to be the change that I want to see. So I can't go around telling everybody we should be more civil and be more open-minded if I'm not going to be that way myself.
Yeah.
You know? So I just try to be cool with everybody and talk to everybody and maybe learn something along the way.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to bring it into one of the issues that is maybe a little bit different.
Hit me.
I hear tell that you are interested in UFOs.
Yeah, I always have been, ever since I was a kid.
My wife as well. So
Oh, nice.
tell me about this. Like, what's your fascination?
It's not even like necessarily that I believe or I don't believe or they're aliens. It's just always been a cool phenomenon that I've always been interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, surely when it comes to like talk of like extraterrestrial life and all that kind of stuff, I believe that there is probably life somewhere else. I mean, it seems a little arrogant to think that we're the only people, you know, in the huge universe, but I don't necessarily know if I believe that UFOs or aliens coming to contact us or whatever, but it's a cool story,
Fun to think about.
Yeah, fun to think about.
Yeah.
I've gone down many rabbit holes with things like UFOs and Bigfoot and all that kind of stuff. It's fun to me.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Ancient civilizations.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, there's so many, especially you talk about social media. YouTube, you know, has just been this fascinating storage of, you know, almost anything you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
There's somebody who's done a documentary on it or something.
Yep.
And it's pretty crazy, all the stuff you can just dive into.
Ever since I was a kid, there would be UFO documentaries on TV, and I would just sit there and watch them and just like, well, that's cool, like, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm really like indifferent about it. I don't know whether I believe in, you know, what everybody thinks they are or whatever, but it's definitely a cool topic to look at.
Yeah, I'm definitely a sci-fi fan as well, and my scientific brain kicks in a bit, you know, thinking about UFOs as actual things,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, well, it doesn't really make sense how they could actually get here because of the challenges of space travel, but we don't know everything. Things could change, you know. But I definitely think that if somebody was able to either contact us or actually get here, my impression is that if they got to the point of being evolved enough to get the technology that they would need to make that kind of change, they had to survive the violent tendency that I think is probably part of that evolutionary process.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who did get here, I'm not really so worried about, you know, it being like to take us over.
Yeah.
I think they'd probably, you know, be very interesting and nice to us.
Yeah.
I don't think they would be coming to squash us, but I could be wrong there too.
It's a cool idea, man. I really wish. I don't know. It's fun to think about.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's logistical reasons for it not being, you know, aliens or whatever, but I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Like you said, we don't know everything.
Well, it's a fun journey as we're finding out, huh?
Yeah, I think that's another thing too, that I think people should be more comfortable with just admitting they don't know certain things. I feel like sometimes people don't know something, and so they do mental gymnastics to try to make dots connect, or they just make up something to try to fill in the gaps. And it's like, I think I've learned to become okay with the fact that I don't know certain things, and I think that it gives me some kind of peace in a weird way, because I don't find myself constantly going around looking for the meaning of this and that. I just kind of accept it as it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's...
Well, I think it's a good thing.
That's
In fact,
kind of
we've had several guests bring up the same thing about the need for some humility in what we think we know.
Yeah, when you start thinking you know everything, that's when you get some not so good outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to be open.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been just a fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
But before we leave, would you like to close us out with a song?
I'd love to.
Right on.
shackles on. Now, baby, please. Your lamp down low. Yeah, turn your lamp down low. I'll beg you all night long, baby, please don't go back to New Orleans. Don't you call my name. Now don't you call my name. You got me way down here with your ball and chain. Now baby, please. Please don't go. Now, baby, please don't go. Now, baby, please don't go back to New Orleans. You know I love you so.
Again, fantastic. What can you tell us about this song?
This is a song called Baby Please Don't Go, and it's an old Texas blues song. Figured I'd lighten the mood a little bit from talking about politics and religion.
Right on. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show, and I hope you'll come back again sometime soon.
Thank you for having me.
Right on. And be well.